My name is Sean. I work at UNDP BRH as the Indigenous Youth Coordinator, primarily working in the intersections between Indigenous youths and climate action as well. And I'm joined here today by my very, very fabulous co-moderator, Vidi. Vidi?
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for setting the energy right for the session this morning. The discussions that we're going to have today are critical, urgent, and anything but passive. So I'm glad this session happened straight after a coffee break because we all got to get some sugar and coffee in our systems. But by means of introduction, I'm Vidhi Mago with the UNDP's Asia Pacific Business and Human Rights team based here in Bangkok, and I am absolutely thrilled and honored to moderate this discussion on sustainable business futures, youth-led rights action for corporate change, alongside my amazing colleague, Sean, of course. Now, we've got an incredible lineup of panelists today, people who are out there doing the work, leading the campaigns, setting the next generation businesses, as we will unpack shortly, pushing for policy shifts, and proving that young voices are not just nice to have. They're absolutely rudimentary for any kind of change. But before we dive into this conversation, let's take a minute to set the tone. Let's look at the landscape we're looking at. Here's a number to sit with: 750 million. That's how many young people aged 15 to 24 are in the Asia Pacific region alone. That's 60% of the world's youth population. Youth from our region not only plays a key role in the development of the cities and countries that they come from, but also crucially drive long-term human and economic development, not just in the corporate offices, but also across global supply chains, food production, new tech, and beyond. And also, by the way, Gen Z has officially overtaken millennials as the most populous generation on Earth. And the impact of their entry into the world stage is swift and it's profound. You feel it everywhere, don't you? In workplaces, in politics, in culture, in retail consumption. And before Sean says it, I'll go ahead and say it. All the raise, slay, goat lingo that you hear, by the way, yeah, that's all Gen Z. So what does this mean for businesses? It means young people are not waiting to be invited to the table. We're already in the room, as you can all see. So take Indonesia, for example. Youth advocacy has pushed corporations to reduce plastic waste. Take South Korea, for example. Young climate litigators are holding businesses accountable for emissions. And before I move on, Sean, I know you've got thoughts on this.
Yes, Vidi. You know, when you mention all these examples, right, for me, it's not just a one-off win. It's already proof that youth-led action is going off, is taking charge, right? It's already changing the way that businesses operate. And when I think about youth-led action, I've always feel like it's something I'm always happy about because been working in the CSO space and whatnot. I've always seen my friends trying to push for youth on taking changes and whatnot, and seeing how it actually operationalized in businesses is just something personal to me as well. So that's actually what we're exploring today, how young people are taking action, influencing industries and driving responsible business practices from within and also from the outside, not only as consumers and the larger public, but also as corporate employees, policymakers, gig workers, and even young entrepreneurs. Right, Vidi?
Right, Sean. So before I get into our distinguished panel's insights onto the topic, I'd like to get a quick pulse check of the room. By a show of hands, okay, everybody, how many of you identify as youth?
If you think you're young, if you think you look young, you can also put up your hand, okay?
Amazing. All right. Okay. That's very No, we'll accept self-proclaimed because we want the energy to be youthful always. Again, by a show of hands, for the second question, you do not need to identify or self-classify yourself into a generation or age group, but how many of you have seen firsthand how young people are pushing for corporate change, whether through advocacy, innovation, or, just being a more socially conscious generation? We see it everywhere. Yeah? Okay, great, awesome. All right, one final one, I promise. How many of you have seen a business change, like change their behavior or tweak a little bit of its own practices because of youth activism? Maybe they've put in place a human rights policy, improved labor rights conditions, or maybe just made a commitment on sustainability, right? Okay, we see fewer hands, maybe lesser. And that's what we are here to unpack together today. Thank you so much for being such an amazing audience, by the way. The reality is, youth-led actions have already transformed industries. But it's time to take it further. The question is not whether young people have the power to drive corporate change. We know they do, right? We know they do. But the question is, how do we move the youth from applying pressure to businesses actually embracing it as a partnership, right? And doing it all together. So I heard a speaker say yesterday, data is power, but partnerships are synergies. So that's what we're getting at. We want youth to be perceived as partners. And to help us dive deeper into the conversation, I can't help but think about something a youth speaker said yesterday in the opening plenary. She said, "We are often spoken about, but rarely spoken with." Atira, I see you here with us today, part of the UNICEF's Young People's Action Team. You've engaged with over 2,000 young people across 11 countries. Based on your experiences, what have you observed as the role of youth in driving corporate change? And can you share any instances where youth-led action has been the tipping point for corporate accountability or just encourage transformation? Thank you, Atira.
Thank you. So, sawadika, selamat pagi, and good morning. So, I sit before you today as a 22-year-old Malaysian. I am a living testament to the fresh vigor and transformative potential as a youth. And today I bring a message not just of protest, but of profound systemic change and enduring peace. In an age where many corporate leaders have become so deeply embedded in established systems that they mirror, young people offer a vital disruptive counterbalance, and that is a perspective unclouded by tradition and fueled by the urgency of tomorrow. So for far too long, the corporate world has operated under structures and practices that over time blur the lines between progress and complacency. But when young people step forward, they do more than challenge the status quo. They illuminate it. We shine a light on the outdated paradigms that no longer serve society, compelling you to see that sustainability and human rights are not optional extras, but essential cornerstones of modern business. So, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights make one thing abundantly clear. Every responsible actor must be held accountable for the negative impacts of their actions. So when corporations' policies and practice contribute to environmental degradation or social inequity, the cost is not simply measured in lost profits. It is counted in lives affected and futures compromised. And so youth activism then is a call to remedy these deep-seated harms and to forge a new path where business success is intrinsically linked with ethical stewardship. So we must marry what youth do best, which is advocacy, mobilization, and visionary thinking, with what you corporates do best, which is industry expertise, technical knowledge, and institutional power. So picture a corporate landscape where young people are not only heard, but are equal partners in shaping policies, steering innovation, and co-creating solutions. So businesses can achieve this in many ways, and one is institutionalizing children and youth consultations and governance through dedicated advisory bodies. And two, conducting focus group discussions and workshops to harness children and youth insight, which was an approach that I personally got to implement alongside UNICEF Malaysia back in last November and December to basically inform the updated NDCs nationwide in Malaysia. And so the role of youth in shaping society is not one of mere disruption, but of purposeful reconstruction, anchored in a philosophy of interconnectedness, justice, and peace. We are not just protesters. We are architects of a world where profit aligns with purpose, where innovation serves as a bridge to equity, and where progress is measured by collective well-being. Today, youth advocacy groups have played a huge role in democratizing knowledge by breaking down complex issues into accessible and relatable narratives. And these youth-led movements are dismantling barriers across issues as diverse as refugee rights, climate action, and mental health reform, translating complex policies into accessible stories that resonate across digital landscapes, such as Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and ensuring that knowledge is not a privilege, but a catalyst for change. And so while our methods may come off as unconventional, they are rooted in truth, and that every voice holds power, and that true transformation is only possible when those most often sidelined, such as Indigenous youth, young migrants, young women and girls, and young people with disabilities are not just included, but center in shaping the future. So to you, the corporate leaders, I issue an earnest challenge. Do not allow the familiarity of the old ways to stifle the promise of the new. The youth are not merely participants in this change. We are catalysts, pushing beyond complacency to redefine corporate responsibility. And in my time as a youth advocate, I have been inspired by my peers who disrupt the norm and shatter the cynical notion that compassion is a weakness. And true leadership is not feigned indifference. It is the courage to uplift those beyond ourselves, to hold space for the most vulnerable, and to amplify their voices through every channel possible. And so the future of business and of society depends on our willingness to lead with heart.
Thanks so much for that incredibly powerful statement, Atira. May I stop here now? I've done a lot of speaking here already, and pass over this stage to Sean to introduce us to our panelists.
All right. By the way, thank you again, Atira, for that. As a fellow Malaysian, seeing the work that you do and the insights that you've given is really inspiring to me as well. But enough talking for the both of us. I think we've talked a lot, and I'm actually supposed to introduce the panelists, but because I talk a lot, I think the panelists should introduce themselves instead of me introducing them. So perhaps we have four very, very amazing panelists on this board today. I will now perhaps invite Amira. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Amira Bilkis. I'm from Indonesia, but now I'm based in Australia. I'm a co-founder of a youth-led organizations that has been working as well so close with the UNESCAP Energy Divisions here. And then we have more than 500 members across Southeast Asia, as well as we do have a partnerships across Asia Pacific, as well as a catalyst of the others as well. And last but not least is now I'm serving as a youth council member, serving and advising the Secretary Generals of IRENA, or International Renewable Energy Agencies. And I'm looking forward for the discussions as well with everyone and the panelists as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Amira. The next one that we have on our panel is Tomo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tomo. Originally from Japan, but I've been living in Bali, Indonesia for the last 10 years. I think I'm youthful, but I don't think I'm part of the youth segment. I'm in my mid-40s, so a little bit older than the youth segment. I guess like many of you here, I wear many hats. The couple of hats that I wear one is a founder of a eco hotel in Ubud, Bali, called Mana. It's a sustainable place, restaurant, accommodation, and a shop. So perspective from a small business owner. I'm also a co-founder of a social enterprise called Earth Company. So we support social entrepreneurs through a program called Impact Heroes. Impact Heroes. So that's more on the civil society side. And then we also have a program called Impact Academy that runs sustainability programs for students as well as companies. So that is kind of connecting the corporate and I guess sustainability or civil society side. I'm also a father to 4 kids, so 11, 10, 6, and 4. So they represent Gen Alpha. So I'm a little bit familiar with the Gen Alpha lingo, but not fluent. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much, Tomo. I think you're more well-versed in the Gen Alpha lingo than I am. Like when I scroll TikTok now, I still don't understand most of the words. Yeah, so now on the next one that we have on the panel is Rehan. Rehan, would you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Rayhan. I'm working for Greenpeace Southeast Asia as a regional campaign strategist, legal and political, based in Jakarta. Greenpeace Southeast Asia is based in Jakarta, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Manila, and Bangkok, Thailand. We work on 3 advocacy components, which are policy change, and the second one is change in the business sectors, and the third one is change in the public. So great to have this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you here, Rehan. And the last person on our panel today is Meenal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meenal. I'm a lawyer and a researcher. Little worried to be called an expert. I don't think I am, but I've been working closely in the policy space with advocacy around democratizing conservation practices at the regional level in India, and also at the global level by engaging with the Convention on Biological Diversity, also part of the Women's Caucus. And I am currently a research and policy associate at an organization called Women for Biodiversity, again, advocating for democratizing and allowing women's voices, women and girls' voices to be heard in conservation spaces. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Meenal, for your introduction. And as you can see here, we have a vast variety of expertise. We have a business owner, a lawyer, and so on. So in order to just go towards our discussion, I'll just start the Q&A sessions now. So my first question is directed to Amira. Amira, could you reflect on the role of youth in energy transformation and perhaps share insights on where you see the entry points for changes in corporate behavior or accountability in the energy industry, where you have been involved with along with other young people? Over to you.
Thank you so much. One of the things that I think very important that we need to understand first is that young people that are actually part of the energy transformation sometimes actually left behind in a sense because how our world has been changing unprecedented, basically. And then there is a disconnect that we need to understand as well. What has been doing in the business as usual? For example, a lot of like fossil fuel industries, a lot of like now renewable energies that are emerging as well. We definitely need to actually understand the range of expertise, the generations before us. And because the demand, the forecast demand that we are actually seeing is gonna be different, then how do we actually be, as mentioned by Tira before, about an equal partnerships and intergenerational collaborations that will be very much important for us to actually change the way that we want to do in a corporate business. And I think I see the entry points, couple of things that I think should be highlighted. The first one, most of the time is about leadership directive. The highest level in the corporate world, we're like, oh yeah, we want to do this, we want to do that. But sometimes there is also an issue of like power dynamics then. So a lot of things, that brings me to my second point, is about also the market and competitive forces that has been ongoing, because now I would like to mention a couple of examples. For example, now in the UAE, a lot of energy companies are like working towards more sustainabilities. A lot of this were actually really working on getting the young people engaged, because they need to know what is the young people is actually doing, what is the education's readiness is actually happening, so that they would actually bring the most prominent potential candidates for them to actually enter the workforce of the new businesses of, merging the economic growth, as well as trying to detach that to the emissions growth as well. And last but not least, I would say it's about what the young people has been involving with. Now, as I mentioned before, we are working closely with the UNESCAP Energy Divisions as well, because now we are trying to advise, and I think I see some of my fellow working groups as well in here. Basically, we are gathering the Asia-Pacific youth leaders to actually brainstorm with us about what is youth as a partners in achieving SDG 7 specifically, because we work in the energy space, and then how does it actually influence the businesses later on, once these guidelines that we are making for policymakers is actually relevant to them. So I think it's all about how we make this as an opportunities of intergenerational collaborations. And second, without me saying, we've been saying it for the couple of panels, and I'm appreciated as well that this conference actually featuring young people at every panel lineup, is that we are here not to actually demanding you only, but this is because we are actually the biggest stakeholders of the consequences that you are going, the consequences of what you are going to do or decide today as well. So I think it's important as well for us not only to be included, but also work along with us, because that's actually much more relevant. I'll actually have I have a couple of examples, but I think I'll just pass it over now and then talk a little bit more after. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Amira. I like how you bring up the importance of intergenerational cooperation. Perhaps I ask you that in the next question that we have. I think it's more related to us as well. And now, going from Amira, we're going towards Tomo. So Tomo, as a business owner and through your advisory work and engagement with other businesses, how have you observed Asian corporates, include youths in this discussion? Is the progress you have observed similar or perhaps different to Amira's?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I thought that was going to be asked last, but it's okay. I actually also found a name tag in my notebook that I brought from Bali, so you can remember my name better. In terms of as a business owner, I think the issue of youth is extremely important in so many ways, not just for the bottom line, but also about hiring, recruiting talent, and all these things. But I think the issue of youth is really, if we zoom out a little bit, it's really about how do we give voice to the voiceless, right? It's really, if we zoom out a bit, it's not about youth, it's all about vulnerable people, it's about marginalized people. And so I think when one company in Japan that I admire is called Euglena, and they're a biotech company, and they make kind of biofuel from microalgae. But they actually have a position called Chief Future Officer. And so it's part of their board structure, and it's represented by someone under 18. And that's actually their they've gone through 3 generations of these Chief Future Officers. So I think having some sort of structure, especially at the board level, especially at the decision-making level, and incorporate the voice of those who are often voiceless or not given enough voice, I think is a really important part, and I think that's one way. Another way is to, if we, draw that comparison to the natural world, giving rights to mountains and rivers, and I think that's an increasing trend in a lot of the, I would say in all over the world, in New Zealand, in the U.S., giving, and that's been a impetus to reverse decisions on dam creation and things like that. So giving, and I think I see all these kind of ways to give voice to the voiceless. The other thing that I found really cool last year when I attended a conference was actually to give plants a voice. So there are actually tools nowadays. If you look up plant wave, for example, it's actually giving notes to the electromagnetic signals that the plants actually produce within their plants and also in communication with other plants. And so we can actually hear plants. And so I think we have to create ways. In some ways, we're not the smartest species on this planet. And so we need to create ways in which we can actually connect with these different segments that we often neglect consciously or unconsciously. So I think that's a really important part.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tomo. Amira talked about intergenerational cooperation, the importance of it, and then you have Tomo coming in, mentioning how there are already corporates out there that is having some sort of like chief future officers, right? And chief future officers. Don't you think that's interesting, Vidi?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and it's the first time that I've heard something like that. But while we're on the topic of structure and laws and policies, I'm looking at you, Minal. Rehan. I see that you've worked at the intersection of law, policy, and activism, contributing to the shaping of environmental governance in Southeast Asia. Moving beyond compliance to proactive responsibility, from your experience, Rehan, what concrete steps can businesses take to strengthen legal protections of communities and young activists facing environmental and social harm?
Yeah, thanks, Vidi. I think before answering that question, I think we need to understand why is it indispensable to protect the legal rights of activists and also including youth in this case. So when we talk about, we believe that to have sustainable business, there are needs of two enabling conditions. One is, enabling policy, and then it should be enforced. And let's say the policy is there, and there is sustainable company like Tomo does. They comply, they run a business, and they have and also they define the purpose of the business, not only profit, but also social and environmental change out there. And this will not be fair if the regulation is not well forced. From my experience, for instance, there is extended producer responsibility, if you ever heard about this policy, where some manufacturer corporate, they need to manage the plastic they produce. So if it's not well enforced, and then let's say one sustainable company will say that, oh, it's not well enforced, why should I apply this policy while other corporates, they don't follow the rules? And this is where I see the roles of youth is really important to ensure and activists to to ensure the implementation of this policy. So that's why it is important to protect the legal rights protection of youth and activists to enable the implementation of environmental policy.
Thank you so much for your insights, Rehan. I think that gives us a perfect transition. And this time I'm looking at you and speaking to you, Minal. You've spent a significant part of your career navigating policy spaces where corporate interests often might collide with the rights of local communities. From your experience, what are some of the key challenges that advocates like yourself face when raising human rights concerns in corporate and policy discussions? And how can youth-led advocacy shift from being seen as a force of resistance to a real driver of meaningful collaboration and partnerships?
So I think the challenges have already been spoken about by some of the indigenous activists that you see here. And I think one of the biggest challenge that we're facing, especially in Asia, is human rights and environmental defenders, right? And what's happening. I don't need to go into that. But it's a real concern. And the CBD has actually addressed it in the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Now, the point is, how do we get data on what is actually happening? And are nation states ready to give that kind of data, to monitor what is happening? So I think that is an overall challenge that you face. And it's more towards grassroots activists, young people who are defending their land and our environments and nature and biodiversity on the ground. So that's one of the biggest challenges that I see. The other is invisibility. And oftentimes the invisibility is also marked in spaces where you are participating, but you're not taken seriously, right? So it's a very tokenistic kind of tick mark kind of space that is created, which becomes a challenge. And the third, I think, is intersectionality. Who are the youth that are able to reach policy spaces and to actually influence policy? Because it could be people like me who have had the privilege to have a good education, to be able to speak in a language that everybody understands. And what we have seen in Asia is that not everybody is given that space. So it's very important for young people like us, where it is important to talk about in spaces where other kind of young people, women and girls, are not given an opportunity to bring up their voices, but also at the same time step back a little and allow young people who have not been given a chance to get into these spaces. It's very difficult. In the UN space, the most common, I think, challenge that we are facing to get girls and young people is funding. The ability to have a passport. So these are extremely real challenges that I think very few of us even bother to ask unless we are actually faced with this challenge that comes up, when we are trying to get in more young people. And in the CBD space, there is very little representation of Asian youth or Asian women and young girls. So that is something that we are trying to change, have more regional representation, allow these voices to be heard. These are some of the challenges. Having said that, how do we surpass these challenges? I think what you said about resistance is, I think, the first step towards really understanding what your rights are, what your human rights are. And although we've been hearing panelists talk about how this is a real issue, right? Like, there are frameworks, there are disclosure frameworks that are talking about human rights and the need to disclose. But at the same time, what is the real monitoring that is happening? Where there is resistance, is there a way to actually bring people on the same platform? Are there grievance redressal mechanisms that don't necessarily have to reach courts, right? Can there be spaces where we talk to each other, which are more informal and which are more inclusive? How do we build that? So that is something that I think is needed, and not just tokenistic sort of spaces where people like us can come and speak about representation of the youth. So there is a need to build those spaces, and how do we as organizations or civil society groups with the means to do that, allow that sort of integration to happen, is something that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mina. I was looking at Slidos, the question there, and actually one of the questions is actually very, very related to what you mentioned about tokenism, and perhaps I could direct the question directly to you now, because I was very curious of it as well. Because even in the work that we do, there's a lot of talks about tokenism, right? But in your experience working, how do we go far beyond tokenism when it comes to us engaging with youths in particular, whether it's in corporate, international organizations, and so on?
So I think one of the key challenges that we as civil society actors face is when there are research, documentation, or capacity building efforts that we are engaged in, and the key, like I said, the language aspect is something that we are so not focused on. Basic, just having translations or translators in place is something that is going to be really helpful for for the participation of marginalized people. Apart from that, I think there is a need for creating environments which are not very corporatized. So even, for example, spaces like these can exclude a lot of people immediately, right? So how do we make sure that there are that events like these also happen at a level which are more inclusive, where people feel welcome to be able to say what they have to say? So I think these are really big challenges, and unless we start working towards it in a smaller way, we have tried to do that by ensuring that women and girls that we work with are able to say what they have to say directly. So if it comes to not being able to represent, then having smaller videos of them, or sharing those messages where it is important. In India, in a lot of remote spaces, WhatsApp works. So having voice notes from people on the ground to be able to take them to policy spaces and let people in positions who take decisions hear those voices. So these are, I think, some of the smaller steps. We don't need to think like very big things, but just basic stuff like translation, spaces. How do we get these voices in the policy making spheres, even if they can't be physically present? So I think these are some of the things that we could start looking at.
Yeah, I agree as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just like to add a brief point. I mean, I think the issue of tokenism, I think, is not just relevant for youth representation, but I think it's applicable to almost everything that we talk about in terms of sustainability, in terms of women, girls representation, indigenous representation. It's really about not understanding why, right? If you don't understand why it's important to incorporate them, of course it's going to be tokenism, it's going to be a checklist thing, and there's going to be greenwashing, and maybe there'll be youth washing, there'll be whatever washing, right? And I think I think one is really understanding the why. Why is it important? And why, I think, on so many levels, right? Why for your business? Why as a human being do you care? Why as a parent? Why as whatever? And I think there's got to be intention, right? I think to me, that's a really key word, intention. Like, what is the intention behind this policy, this action, this whatever? If there's no intention, then it is going to be tokenism. So it is going to be a token. So I think it comes down to the why and the intention to me.
Right. Thank you, Tomo, for adding in. I do agree that the intention there when engaging with all these marginalized groups, particularly, is very important for everyone. And I think that's a very nice segue towards the question that I will now proceed to Amira. So, Amira, so we have discussed challenges and barriers that you'd experienced in previous forums, such as not being included, like Minal mentioned, or respected in policymaking, as well as in corporate leadership. So in your work that you have done, have you observed any trends within Asian corporates in increasing youth inclusion? In what ways are we making progress? And in what ways are we not, or perhaps even falling behind?
If it is an essay question, it would be like A, B, C, D. So bear with me when I'm addressing this question. I think Tomo has mentioned really a bit about understanding the why. And I think there are certain companies that I'm actually looking at the way that, oh, they actually realized what we've been talking about, this youth inclusion, youth engagement, and so forth. I see them at first hand. The first one is Desa Energi Berdikari, or a self-sufficient communities that are actually being promoted and initiated by Pertamina, one of the largest energy companies back home in Indonesia, where they are actually work together with a local youth organization, a Society of Renewable Energy, there to actually engage and teach the whole communities on how to actually be more self-sufficient when it comes to using micro hydros. They are using biogas, biodiesels that are coming basically from the region and from the areas, as well as they are being capacitated on how to actually maintain these self-sufficiencies when it comes to energy on that one. And second is the one that I see in Abu Dhabi. This is coming from Masdar, where they actually have an initiative called Youth for Sustainabilities. Basically, this is a dedicated initiative that are mandated right away from the CEO of Masdar. And they actually recently won a C4All Heroes Awards. This platform trying to connect the industry leaders and blended learning, which also includes like forum. They actually provided the platforms that were actually mentioned by Minal before. Innovation Lab, basically, they are actually trying to find a potential innovation ideas when it comes to energy and let them to actually work directly with the engineers within the master, and then they also have a capacity building, a mentorship, apprenticeship, basically a lot of arms that they are actually doing to engage them. And when you are actually asking a question on what kind of progress that we are making and what ways that we are not, I think it's important to understand that there are corporate change that are very much tokenism, because they are just saying, oh yeah, we are going to just ride the wave. There are a lot of events, there's a lot of sustainability events, initiatives that are working together. But there are some that are dies out because the leadership changes, as I said before. So I think in order for us to actually sustain that and consider us young people as part of partners, I mean, I myself not doing all of this because I want to or I get the money from. This is basically just my volunteer work. I do have my full time. I actually a woman-headed household. I actually try to support my 7 members of families, and it's actually really hard, and especially in the energy sectors where it's all male-dominated. So I'm not doing this because I felt like, oh yeah, I could actually have the opportunity to speak here or speak there. No, I felt like I should supposed not to be here. I supposed to enjoy my time with my families and everything. But like, our generations has, really traumatized on the consequences that we are actually experiencing firsthand. So we ended up step out of our comfort zone just to kind of like convince them. So corporate change definitely it's a must that we can actually do by engaging with us. I see some of the questions asking like, then is there any reason why we should not engage us? Then it's going to be the loss of our entire generations. Because what you are deciding now as the business leaders, I hope there are a lot of CEOs or a lot of business owners here, that without us, your business not going to gain any more big profits if you are not actually engaging the biggest stakeholder, the biggest consumers, right? The biggest workforce that you are going to have. So it's not about our loss only, it's also about your loss. So I think I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amira. I really am happy that you are part of the panel today. Thank you for coming as well, despite, you mentioned that you have work to do and whatnot, right? And you're talking directly towards business owners. And speaking about a business owner, I will directly go towards Tomo here. So I think it's a nice segue. Tomo, I actually stalked you before coming here to see what questions that I could ask a business owner and whatnot, right? So in one of your, I think it's a recent interview, you mentioned that seeking to go beyond sustainability and striving for regeneration through your business. I want to ask, right, why is this shift necessary? And do you think companies in Asia are ready to embrace it? Over to you.
Thank you. Just before I start on the kind of regeneration topic, I just wanted to add on to what Amira was saying about continuity of these efforts. I think one of the biggest issues in sustainability is sustainability of sustainability efforts. It's really about the longevity. It's about continuing. Yes. And it might be a good idea, but the fact whether or not it's going to last for years is a big question. And I think especially with the younger generation, ADHD and distraction is a huge deal, right? It's a real issue. And so they might get interested, they might get inspired, but can they actually follow through? Can they actually build a team and mobilize resources to actually do it for years to make meaningful impact? I think that's a big challenge, I think, especially for the older generation like me. How do we support these kinds of, to ensure sustainability of sustainability efforts? On the question of sustainability and regeneration, I mean, that's something I could probably talk for hours. And if anyone's interested, I'm very happy to talk about it after this. But I think there's a huge wave of kind of regenerative principles, regenerative mindsets that's coming into this world. And I understand, this conference is about corporate sustainability and environmental rights. But maybe in the future it will be actually renamed corporate regeneration. And I think it's that kind of shift that's happening in the sustainability world. And I think the reason why this shift is happening is not because I personally don't think sustainability is categorically bad. But I think we all would agree that there is a lot of greenwashing, there is a lot of just insufficient effort and action in sustainability. So if sustainability was this huge thing, there's probably a lot of good, but there's a lot of just insufficient action and intention. And one way to put it is we're just dying more slowly if we do sustainability as business as usual, right? And so regeneration is not about sustainability on steroids. Regeneration is really about how do we talk about sustainability beyond the environment. We talk about social issues, we talk about human rights in a much more holistic sense. And it's also not about just bringing ourselves to a zero carbon, it's not just about negating the bad stuff. How do we bring ourselves to a positive state? And I think the most important difference between kind of the sort of sustainability and this kind of regenerative mindset is really is our mindset. We often talk about, we coexist with nature, but we are nature. So we're mammals, right? We're primates. We are nature. We shouldn't be talking about coexistence. The fact that we're talking about coexistence is actually the fact that we've already detached ourselves from nature. And so it's really, how do we uncover the underlying biases that we have, the underlying paradigms that we've built in how we conceive the economy and society, other people, the vulnerable people. So it's really this inner dimension, inner development that's really important to regeneration. And I love the way there's a book called Regenerative Leadership. And I think they have really done a great job talking about regeneration. Regeneration is about integrating outer sustainability and inner sustainability. Outer sustainability are things like sustainable policy, sustainable technology, sustainable energy, sustainable, all these things that we all have been pursuing for the last few decades, and I think almost everyone here is involved in. But that's not actually working at a planetary level, at a species level. We need to actually integrate outer sustainability and inner sustainability. Inner sustainability meaning, how do we build more compassion? How do we build more creativity, playfulness, art? These kinds of things that are really important to ourselves. And if we can combine these two elements, then we're not going to be burning out, because we're working on sustainability issue or climate change negotiation. And I think it's that shift that the regeneration is promoting and promising in a way. And so I see a lot of potential in that, especially in that inner dimension of sustainability, and how do we regain the sense that we are nature.
Thanks for that, Tomo. I'd let that sit with everybody here, and I think that's something to really think about as well. I mean, we're in a conference on sustainability, but at the same time, this is also our complex of superiority, for example, talking because we're also nature. So completely resonate with that. And I was just having a chat with you yesterday, and I went up to Tomo and I asked him, what is a B Corp certified hotel? I got to know that you have Southeast Asia's first B Corp certified hotel, and he said to me that it's. And I was like, what are the criterias? And then I remember you said to me that, it's just, one of the criterias was, how do you continue being sustainable even after you're gone? And to me, that it really stuck with me, because it really, again, talks about sustainability of the efforts to sustainability, right? So really, really, really good food for thought here, Tomo. Thanks for that. Moving on, Rehan. Youth-led campaigns across Asia have been at the forefront of driving policy shifts on climate, pollution, and biodiversity. Let's get to some examples and solutions and get a little optimistic here. Can you share an example where activism has directly influenced corporate or policy decisions? And how can businesses integrate these efforts into their operations? We know Tomo's business is doing it, but we just want to make sure we're all on the same page with this. So perhaps get us started.
Yep, thanks, Vidi. So before I share the example, let me share a little bit about answering a question why, Tomo, why do youth need to engage? I'd like to quote Amira and Atira saying that when youth advocate something, they're not making disruption. And yeah, I agree with that. It's related to how we define what is it to be a good citizen, I would say. And Greenpeace usually have a political class every year. And one of the questions we discuss is, what is it to be a good citizen? And what is it to be a good citizen? It's to be politically active beyond electoral. So when you try to protect the other citizens' right, you try to be a good citizen, and that's, I think, where youth play important role, to be a good citizen, to protect others' rights, basically. And as a citizen, we're not only a national citizen now, we are also global citizen. That's why it's important to actively engage in the global, negotiation and a policy-making process. And this is where I see like the example where youth can really change the dynamic of plastic treaty negotiation, for instance, to promote the solution that can really tackle plastic pollution problems. And one of the, youth, I see like they were not only active, just attending the plastic treaty negotiation, but they actively engage with the countries like to change their position towards like something meaningful and really good. So that's the example, and that's where last year, for instance, like one of the Indonesian like youth activists can really touch like the heart of like hundreds of like countries. They switch basically the position. So what the plastic treaty tries to do is to like manage plastic from upstream to the downstream part. So it's not only managing the plastic waste, but also how it's oversupply at the moment. It's not sustainable at all. And for business, it's not good. When it's oversupply, the price is not good at all as well. So, and youth can convince these countries to keep the option like to reduce the plastic production, and also to promote like reuse system, where this is really biggest enabler condition to reduce single-use plastic, for instance. And in terms of like how business can like operate in their system, translate this like policy into their system, is by having, as I mentioned earlier, like we need to have like a strong enabling condition. What is it the incentive for me like to apply like regenerative like system, like Tomo say, because when I do that, everyone also does that as well. So when certain company tries to do a good thing, it's not disincentive for them. So yeah, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Rehan, and thanks, panelists, for this amazing discussion today. I had another question lined up for Minal, but time is running out. And you guys are extremely, extremely helpful because you guys have fired the Slido left, right, and center with questions. So Minal, we're gonna tweak things up a little bit, and Sean has another question up for you, straight from the audience, fresh.
Yes, so we have a question from Slido for me now. I hope that's okay. And it's actually an interesting question because this question, this person asks, is talking about including youth in order to maximize the company's profits the best way to make businesses sustainable? What do you think? And perhaps other panelists could chip in as well after me now.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. And I think there are elements of it already being answered by all of us, including what Tomo said. And there is a growing understanding that business as usual cannot take place because of the planetary issues that we're facing. We do not have the resources to have growth unlimited, right? So we do need to start thinking about ways in which, yes, businesses are sustainable or regenerative, but there cannot be, and we should not advocate for unbridled growth. It's just going to put us in peril because the planet is us. So the challenge then is, how do we ensure that we are not reaching the tipping points, but we have crossed the tipping points already. And I think there are examples in global negotiations where we are trying to control it. There are very serious negotiations happening at the UNFCCC, at the CBD, at the UN CCD as well. So we had the triple COP last year. And these were some growth as usual is something that even governments and businesses understand now. And that is why there is increased push to look at nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based approaches to ensure that we are not endangering ourselves to live on this planet. Having said that, there is also a serious need, while we are advocating for these processes, also to ensure that there is no greenwashing taking place. And that is why some of us are advocating for the need to have environmental and social safeguards in place. And there is an active dissociation of a lot of other groups from that process, from that language. So text negotiations are actually very interesting, and I wish more youth get involved in these processes, because it really helps to understand what is the thought process when certain textual recommendations are being supported or not being supported, right? I think it is important to have these new innovative ways to work and to ensure that we are not reaching our tipping point. But at the same time, we do need to realize as businesses also that there is no continuous growth. It is going to stop somewhere if we continue with business as usual.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the last two questions on Slido are talking about, profit maximization. I think this singular focus on profit maximization really reminds me of this quote by Albert Einstein, right? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. That's exactly why we're in this situation now. And if we want to prioritize, if we want to maximize short-term profits, then exploitation, extraction is the solution, right? Mm-hmm. That's the way to make short-term profits. No doubt about it. It's not about investing in the youth, and it's not investing in nature. But it's really about what is the time span that you're talking about, right? Are you trying to maximize in next quarter, next year, or are you talking about next decade or next 100 years? And I've had the fortune of talking to a lot of old companies in Japan. So Japan actually has the most number of companies that are older than 100 years and also 200 years. And for these companies, I have a friend who's the 18th generation of a company that was started in the 15th century. And for them, sustainability is something that they've been doing all along, right? It's now called sustainability or regeneration, but it's so embedded in their ethos, in their philosophy that, of course, they're going to take care of the people. Of course, they're going to take care of the environment, and that's the only way to survive and thrive in the long term, right? And so, it's really, to me, it's really how do we think about the time span when it comes to this profit question. I think profit in itself is not an evil thing. It's really it's about the time span and how do we make it.
All right, thank you so much, Tomo. Because we noticed there were a few people who just came in. Can I ask the tech person to show this Slido one more time? And while they're at it, perhaps we can have any questions from the floor, if anyone wants to ask directly from the floor. If not, we'll go towards Slido. Okay, no one from the floor. Okay,
Yeah,
Belinda?
the Slido was not to discourage floor questions.
No, I've learned a lot, but I do think I have a question just in terms of scale, right? So we spoke about a lot of new ideas, I think, from sustainable to regenerative, and that's a whole new area, and my brain is trying to kind of imagine that. We've spoken about chief future officers, not financial officers. We've spoken about, in the plastic treaty, how we saw youth kind of move the needle on
So it's a lot of information, but my question to the panel, maybe one or two panelists can speak to this, is scale. How do we scale this in Asia? I think we have a lot of developing economies, right? So the old structures, though, are still relatively new for some, right? So how do we bring this to scale, I think is my question. How do we make sure that there is this behavioral change within companies at scale? So not just what kind of push and pull factors do we need? Sorry, I know it's a bit of a complicated one.
All right, thanks, Belinda. Yeah, sure.
Sure. I think that question is really also about how each of the companies is actually doing their businesses. Basically, every businesses have a different types of models when they are kind of like working on their business, basically. But one of the things that I might propose, this is my personal opinion though, try to integrate it in a way that your business decisions is also including somebody's that are actually understanding and have a bigger stakeholder, which is the young people or indigenous, basically in the social spec of it. And then I'm not saying that this is a silver bullet for every businesses, but I think it's really a good opportunities to actually sit together and try to hear on what the young people are actually thinking it, because I believe young people have the privilege, unlike the businesses, unlike the policymakers, they actually have the ideas of idealisms. And they cannot actually be stopped because, well, some of them are young professionals that are already in the work, like me, or maybe some others that are just started to get to understand and probably asking questions, something that you wouldn't actually think about. And that's where that kind of opportunity is supposed to be provided in order for you to actually gain a third-party insights on how you can actually revamp your business process or business models that you are doing, whether it's actually working. I know that what Tomo has said is a high upfront cost, but it's all that in the end of the day, renewable energies, so, we're working with plastics, working with many sustainability initiatives. We just, as a corporate business, you need to understand that it is, of course, costly, but it's costly now rather than costly later, because if it is costly later, you are going to actually spend way more monies now and then for forever, rather than actually avoiding it. So I think it's important as well. One of the examples that can work, maybe that I'm actually seeing, is how at IRENA at least, what we are doing is that we actually discusses with the leaders themselves, and we give an advice on what kind of policies that would work, what kind of things that you should actually discuss in a council. And this council is actually representative of many different parts of the world where the business is actually, operates. So for example, if you are operating in Asia Pacific, then you would actually trying to get diverse of people in the same room. You can actually have it online or offline, and actually think about, okay, this is our plan as a business. You do have like that kind of plan every time you have a business, right? What do you think? What can we improve? What can we? And I think that could also be scaled up in a way, as long as, of course, there is a market competitiveness. If you see like the other businesses is doing well with that kind of models, then you would actually have like a FOMO, right? This business actually works well with this type of model. How about we do this as well? So creating that momentum is also important as well. And engaging the professional, the one that is also already in the field, would be very much important. And all these young people usually already have their own channel or platforms on how to engage the less fortunate with this kind of privileges by engaging with them. Sometimes young people are doing so well with like survey on trying to, digital campaigns. So that can also help your business exposure in a way, in a new light by the young people. Because if not, in the end of the day, there are a lot of young people that are ready with their lawsuit. I recently read in Japan, 10 thermal companies were actually being brought to the court because these 16 young, brave Japanese leaders bringing them to the court that they are suing a lawsuit over these companies. So, because we don't have a choice, either you are cooperating with us or we are actually making disruptions of your businesses. Basically, that's what I think the scale up that we need to accommodate as a businesses, and then also us as a young people that want to be included in that policy-making processes.
Yeah, the question of scale, I think, is often comes up. And the way I see it is the diffusion of innovation, right? I think all of us are familiar with diffusion of innovation. There's 2.5% of innovators, there are 13.5% of early adopters, and then 34% early majority. And so it's any innovation, how it spreads. It spreads from the innovators to the early adopters to the majority. And it's a thing with iPhones, it's a thing with anything, right? With AI. And I think we're at a stage where we're still trying to create high quality cases that actually involve youth, that are really do sustainability with youth well. And we're not in a stage to scale yet. And so I do feel like we're still in the innovator, early adopter phase. And if we don't get the quality right, it's not about the quantity. It's if we do diluted, youth-led sustainability, and we're going to spread that, then that's just youth washing, greenwashing to me. And so it's really about how do we ensure that we have high quality. So we ensure quality over quantity first, and then we get to quantity for me.
Yep. Thanks, Tomo. If I may add, I think, yeah, I agree, like, we need to have, like, a right solution at the beginning before we scale that up. For instance, in the, like, plastic industry, like, sector, like, at the moment, like, how this, like, reuse system can be worked, like, properly. And before it's scaled, I think it should be like piloted. But the most important is like we need to have like clear roadmap. It doesn't mean like it will not be scaled at some point. And yeah, one of the like important milestone is the policy that can enable this this model can be scaled at some point.
Minal, would you like to add something here? If not, we have a whole flood of questions.
Just a reminder, because I think we've already spoken about scaling up and how it needs to be done now, but just the fact that we have human rights concerns, we have environmental and social norms for industries is because young people at some point in history were demanding it. And I think that is what we need to keep doing to ensure that the scaling up of this part happens as well. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just going to go over our Slido because it keeps, every time I hit refresh, there's a new question. But we'll take one last question in the interest of time. And I see the first one up here for the panelists to answer in less than 30 seconds. What is one thing you feel youth are speaking up about, but governments and businesses are not hearing? Who wants to take that up?
Keep going.
That was 1 second.
Really?
We have 29 seconds.
Minal, would you like to add something here? What's something that the youth is saying, but it's just not getting heard?
Well, in my experience, I think there is a need to for businesses to really start thinking about grievance redressal mechanisms which are not legally related. Like she said, we are ready with our lawsuits, but it doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit us because we lose our youth and our time fighting these cases. And not having mechanisms where you can sit together in a space of trust and not have either the state or law make you do things. And because youth are asking for it and women and girls are asking for that space, it is important to, at least for Asian businesses, to start thinking about having very robust grievance redressal mechanisms and talking about this with governments, and not shying away from having these spaces.
For me, a real concern from my perspective is really about mental health of youth. If the youth are not mentally, emotionally, spiritually well, we're not going to have a thriving planet. And so the governments, businesses really need to take that seriously, I think. And one action that comes to my mind in terms of kind of contributing to one solution is the cosmetic company Lush from the UK. They actually, I don't know if they still do it, but 2 years ago they had this campaign called Be Somewhere Else, and they stopped social media advertisements because there's bottomless evidence of how bad social media is for our mental health and especially the youth. And so Lush took a stance that we're not going to use this channel that's detrimental to people's health to advertise our products. And so that's a bold stance that I thought Lush took, but I think it really goes to the point of mental health before any kind of health. Javier?
I think it's all about breaking the stigma of when businesses actually take it for granted, young people's credibilities, because a lot of time, whenever, even this is the small example that sometimes happens, like if I attend something, a conferences like this or so, and then I introduce myself, oh yeah, I'm from this particular youth organizations. I bet they sometimes walk away within just like 30 seconds. Meanwhile, when I actually put my other hat, they're gonna stay. And that's probably like all the really reasons that sometimes a lot of people doesn't actually believe that we have the expertise. But most of us, even me, I'm actually Gen Zs, that are actually already in the systems. I'm already working. I have 5 years experience already, and I'm Gen Z. So it just felt like you are still thinking us as a kids. We are actually now working already. We understand the system. We try to learn what you have been doing wrong, what you have been doing right, and that we are actually trying to digest it and learn it. And that's what we want to share. And most of us are not actually in the highest level because of our age most of the time. If you are like a business owner, that's a different case. But that's probably something that really relevant to this part of the question as well.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize what does it mean, keep going. It's not just going and talking, but yeah, we re-strategize. I mean, it's very normal. Our voice is not heard. I will give you example. For instance, this youth from Indonesia, they're not really heard like by her own government, but and one of the strategy like she did during like plastic treaty, she tries to engage like the European countries, for instance, the countries that can, or countries that can influence your respective government, for instance. And also like in terms of like business, like who fund this business sector that you try to talk to. And then, yeah, this kind of like strategize your strategy. I mean, it will not 100% work, but that's what I mean. Keep going, like let's re-strategize how to voice our voice. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Rehan. And I know everyone is hungry already, but please bear with me for another 3 minutes because we have another important question to ask the panelists for one last time. I hear Vidis telling me that we need food as well, but please bear with me as well. So as you know, we sit in this conference room with a lot of different people from different sectors, right? So I just want to ask our panelists here today, if you had one key recommendation to Asian businesses on how to engage and include youth, what would it be? And keep it short within 30 seconds, or else I'll just off your microphone from here.
Build and professional youth expertise within your team. Build that, and they're gonna actually work wonders for you.
For me, two questions that I would like to share with you. One is it's a question by Paul Pullman, the former CEO of Unilever. Is the world a better place because your business is in it? Is the world a better place because your business is in it? I think it really sums up the question. The second question that I'd like to leave you with is related to youth, is really whose voices are we neglecting consciously or unconsciously? Thank you.
Okay, my turn. Well, I believe there will not be any regenerative of our sustainable system without check and balance in place, and youth is play important role to have this check and balance mechanism to ensure that genuine sustainability will happen. Thanks.
I think everything has been said really beautifully, but just one more thing is listen actively when resistances are happening or when young people are trying to say something, because it's not just about not liking a particular policy or as we've all said, this takes a lot of time, it takes effort, sometimes it's personal. So young people are coming at it and addressing these problems because there is something happening which we need to control. So active listening and then involving young people in decision making, not just participation, is, I think, something that Asian businesses need to do.
All right, thank you so much for all your recommendations and for keeping it within 30 seconds. So on the interest of time, I'll pass it back to Vidi to give the closing remarks.
I think closing remarks is kind of like a high-level thing in the UN system, but both of us are new, so I think we can pass. But we're living in a time of rapid change, and I really appreciate all of you all coming here and taking the time to talk about this important issue. And these are not issues of tomorrow, right? Climate change, human rights, these are all today's battles that we need to fight together today, like now. And businesses that aspire to long-term success, so all the businesses that are here in the room, they need to acknowledge that youth voices go beyond just this room here. And I'm very happy that some of our panelists mentioned earlier that they'd be happy for you all to chase them after this panel and beyond these conference rooms. So both of us highly recommend you to do that. This conversation should not stop here by any chance. And yeah, those are, I'll just stop here. Is there anything you want to say? Yeah? We're all good. Thank you so much for all your time, and maybe we'll give a big round of applause for all our panelists.